We're joined now by political analyst Professor Dirk Kotze from the University of South Africa to talk a little bit more about this. Professor Kotze, perhaps first to hear your impressions, the opposition parties warning ahead of the speech that Panyaza Lesufi should not resort to a popular speech, but rather address the major issues that are crippling Gauteng. We know energy is at the top of that, crime is at the top of that. Basically, did he tick all the right boxes in your view?
Yes, he indeed addressed all the main issues of the province, all the areas in which the province have authority to act in terms of the constitution, in terms of intergovernmental relations, the issues as we listened now to in terms of crime and policing, and in terms of also economic development, which was a very important focus, in terms of education, in terms of various other aspects. Local government also, although strictly speaking, it did not pay so much attention as I think many people would have liked. But the issues in which they specific policy areas, issues, implementation areas, issues, they certainly address that. I think many people will ask, well, is there a budget for all of this? Is it affordable? 400 new cars, vehicles for the police, new helicopters, 6,000 new recruits for the police, and so on. It's a lot of money that's required for that. Over and above, for example, when it comes to electricity, the promotion of renewable energies in all sorts of forms. So the plan itself looks very laudable. It looks like he addressed many issues that people are very much concerned about, where they need some assistance from government or from the public sector in general. But the test is going to be, obviously, like always, is how will it be implemented ultimately.
So
I must also add the final say on
I want to talk about what you mentioned before you go too far, because you've also mentioned quite a number of things, Professor Kotze. So I just want us to drill down on some of them. The issue of the use of smart technology to fight crime. As you mentioned, the big question is, do we have enough money for that? 6,000 recruits, of which he said will be earning a permanent salary, as you mentioned, 400 new cars, the helicopters that he mentioned, the drones, etc. It all sounds wonderful. Like it sounds like we're going to be a safer nation. But how much would this roughly cost, and where would the money be coming from? The Premier is saying that if it were up to him, he would do less talking and more acting. Does he have the budget to act on these promises?
Later than to see the national budget, as the Minister of Finance will present it to us. And about more than 40% of that budget are going to the provinces. This is the fiscal structure of the South African constitutional dispensation is like that. National receives about 45%, provinces about 47%, and local government around about 10%. So it is a substantial amount of money that goes from the national budget to the provinces. But as we've heard today, there's so many issues that the province must attend to. Take, for example, schools. Schooling, primary and secondary schooling are responsibilities of the province also. At national level is mainly the policy domain, but at provincial level is where the real schooling takes place. So that is already something which places a high demand on the budget. Healthcare is another one that requires a lot of the budget. Social welfare is another component which is also nowadays demanding a lot from the budget. So there's lots of issues that provinces are responsible for, and from a financial point of view that they must provide for. But I think crime and this approach is new, but it is most possibly going in the right direction. Most places in the world that became effective in terms of combating of crime started to use more and more technology. We've seen it, I've seen it a little bit earlier over the weekend. There was a program about Cape Town, how they have implemented also technology now and in combating crime there. So it's new for them. And I think if Gauteng is going to do that, it might make a difference, because the traditional or conventional way of having police on the street patrolling in their cars are not producing the results that we are looking for. So a new method, a new paradigm is most possibly going to make a difference. And hopefully this is the way it's going to work. We've seen it, as I said, in many other parts of the world, that it does work.
Those methods and technologies would also need constant upgrading, because we've seen that criminals are more technologically savvy. But I'm just wondering, the total amount that within a financial year that the Gauteng province would spend, how much is it? Roughly how much is it? We've heard the Premier also talk about how Gauteng is going to release 1.2 billion rands towards the energy crisis. And yet, while the Freedom Front Plus was lauding the commitments made by the Premier on fighting the township economy, the EFF lamenting the fact that it's only put like 50 million rands of that towards bolstering the township economy. So the prioritization of how much is needed in which areas, also talk us through that, please.
Yes, that is the art of government, is how to allocate the limited resources. And the budget is exactly that. So later in the week, when we hear about the national budget, that is then where government will say to us what are their priorities in financial terms, in fiscal terms, of how they are going to allocate it for the next year. And that will also give us an indication of what will become available for the provinces, as I explained now a little bit earlier on. So I think at this stage, the provinces are not, like for example, Gauteng is not exactly sure what they are going to get yet. There must be an estimate that they have in mind, but then we will also see the provincial budget later on, when the MEC for Finance will present the budget after the national budget has become known to us. So then again, we will have, and that's sort of the pattern that we see at national level with the SONA speech, and then the budget replicates itself at provincial level and actually also at local government level. I don't think there's anyone except those in the inner circles of the provincial government who have any idea of what the total costs of this will be. I think what one has to also keep in mind that this is not just for one budget year. It's going to be spread, I guess, over a number of years, and that some aspects of this will receive more attention than others in a particular financial year. So we will have to see. Over and above that, of course, is the fact that next year there's the election. So what is the outcome of the election next year at provincial level in Gauteng will also have make an impact on how will this plan ultimately be implemented over not only 1 year, but a number of years into the future.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us. Wish I had more time. Professor Dirk Kotze, who's a political analyst at the University of South Africa.